Penn State wrestling absolutely dominates Nebraska in front of that record-setting crowd out there on the road. But we got to talk about those two decisive losses from Shayne Van Ness and Braeden Davis.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of this live show as we are going live to recap. So yes, we do this for more than just football. We talk about wrestling in the same regard, as this was a huge dual meet. Number 1 Penn State versus number 6 Nebraska. Didn't seem like it though, as the final ended up going to Penn State 31-7. Now, there were some interesting results, both of them positive for Penn State and the negative. Shayne Van Ness and Braeden Davis certainly did not look like themselves. But let's start with the positive, right? That is a record-setting crowd, 6,600 on hand to see the Cornhuskers absolutely get shucked by Penn State. I couldn't pass up that opportunity to make the pun there. But that's the number 6 Nebraska team in the country. And there are All-America contenders in there. There are national title contenders in that lineup. And Penn State just made quick work of them early on, and then the match was out of reach. But, of course, a lot of due respect to Jacob Van D, Pennsylvania native, and Ridge Lovett, who had really strong, decisive victories against their counterparts in Braeden Davis and Shayne Van Ness. But to go through, I mean, Luke Lilledahl proved that he belongs, right? I'm going to try to sum this up and then, go through match by match. But just in general, Luke Lilledahl is a national title contender at 125. He looked like the better wrestler. He looked like the more disciplined wrestler. He had more energy as the match wore on. And for anybody that doubts him and it said, hey, upset victory by number 12 Luke Lilledahl over number 6 Caleb Smith, that's not an upset victory, folks. That is not an upset victory. Luke Lilledahl is better than he's advertised to be and should be given the due respect. This is somebody that is a national title contender. Same thing with Josh Barr. I look at 197 and I think there are maybe a couple of wrestlers, and only because of seniority. Josh Barr, being a redshirt freshman, still has to prove and continue to say that I belong in the national title conversation as early as it is still in the season. But Josh Barr just continues to dominate, whether it's competition that is comparable to him or people that are beneath him right now. It is different seeing Josh Barr at that 197 spot for Penn State. So yes, AJ Ferrari is going to be assumed that he's going to be the favorite to win the national title at 97. But I think Josh Barr has as good of a chance as anybody else in that weight class. Of course, you watch Mitchell Messenbrink and Greg Kirkfleet handle business as usual. Levi Haynes gets its 174 against Lenny Pinto, fellow Pennsylvania native, and that's a talented wrestler in Lenny Pinto. Jacob Van D kind of bucking the trend because he's 5 losses on the season. He certainly is not going to get as much credit as he should. Now, I know Jacob Van D is really talented, and we'll talk about that Braeden Davis matchup. But in regard to Lenny Pinto, is just another Pennsylvania native who certainly these matches mean something for these wrestlers, right? I don't know to bring it in the regard of, they're passed over by Penn State, but this is personal for them. Penn State is the mecca of collegiate wrestling. And for them to go away from their home state and compete somewhere else, you don't think this match means anything to them? So Levi Haynes, to get it started off, to set the tone early for this Penn State wrestling lineup, and a good, solid, decisive victory against Lenny Pinto. And it's good to see Levi Haynes bounce back because he doesn't lose. Keegan, it's good to see that the Keegan O'Toole match, it isn't affecting him in any way. And I know that he's mentally sound, but it's just nice to see that there aren't any lingering effects from Levi Haynes. But across the board, this was as good of a victory as other than a shutout, but it was certainly on the table. It wasn't until that second half of the dual meet a shutout was possible. The first 5 bouts went all to Penn State. And then Jacob Van Ness, Pennsylvania native, go figure, ends up beating Braeden Davis the way that he does. And I mean, you could argue that Davis and to an extent Shayne Van Ness's matches were sloppy. They were undisciplined. I don't look at those necessarily and say that, yep, this is a sign of things to come down the road. I benefit of the doubt because these guys are the starters at Penn State for a reason. So, but for Braeden Davis and Shayne Van Ness, those are really surprising. So let me get to those in just a moment. But to go through the actual results, Levi Haynes 9-2 over Lenny Pinto, Carter Sirachi 11-2 over Silas Allred, Josh Barr 19-4 over McDaniel. At heavyweight, Greg Kirkfleet 20-2 over Harley Andrews. At 125, Luke Lilledahl 4-2 over Caleb Smith. At 133, Jacob Van Ness defeating Braeden Davis 14-7. Beau Bartlett with a come-from-behind victory. Clutch doesn't even begin to describe that. 8-7 with a last-second reversal against Brock Hardy, who now have gone back and forth in this head-to-head matchup. Ridge Lovett, decisive victory against Shayne Van Ness, one that personally shocked me the most. At 149, 157, Tyler Kasak with a decisive victory against Antrell Taylor. That one should have been closer, and Kasak ran away with it 9-3. And Mitchell Messenbrink, business as usual, against Bubba Wilson, who is talented, but Mitchell Messenbrink certainly makes these wrestlers look feeble in comparison. 20-3 to wrap things up in Lincoln, Nebraska. 31-7 the overall score. Let's talk about Braeden Davis first, because that matchup came first against Jacob Van Ness, and then Shayne Van Ness losing 10-2 to Ridge Lovett. The one from Braeden Davis, I look at this and I say this is a bad match. This is not him, especially since not once, not twice, but 3 times Jacob Van Ness caught him. Whether that's, undisciplined or just made a better move. It almost seemed like Braeden Davis was surprised to an extent that, and Van Ness capable of that. So it is surprising in regard that Van Ness 16th coming into this one. Braeden Davis is starting to, right, you rack up some solid wins. You get a win over a top-ranked wrestler in Nasir Bailey, but these ones are so close. And he looked really good against Ryan Crookham. He looked like the aggressor, but then it was Jacob Van Ness who ended up being the aggressor in this one. And Braeden Davis, someone who does not allow a lot of scoring. Again, that one against Ryan Crookham was what, 4-1? For him to surrender 14 points to Jacob Van Ness, like I said, this one personally is going to mean a lot for Van Ness, being from Pennsylvania, right? This is his counterpart. That I don't know if he ever wanted to be at Penn State, but right, you get it, right? Growing up in Pennsylvania, being a state champion at the high school level, and then you go and compete against the school that defines what it means to be a collegiate wrestling program. So Braeden Davis certainly has some things to work out. I didn't see anything overly concerning that says that, like I said, this is a sign of things to come or anything like that. I trust that he will make the adjustments there. But it's some of these, you don't want these things to continue to show up consistently. That passivity, I think for the most part, even in that loss to Ryan Crookham, honestly was a better result in terms of what you take away than the one against Nasir Bailey when it was 1-0. Right, that could have gone either way, and I felt like Davis showed a lot again that Crookham matchup, and you come away with this one from the Jacob Van Ness bout with more questions about Braeden Davis and how is he going to handle that? Is he a fringe All-America contender, or is he truly somebody that should follow up a Big Ten title as a true freshman and someone that is an actual NCAA title contender? Yes, you need some favorability in the bracket, of course. I wouldn't call him a favorite like I would a Josh Barr or honestly a Luke Lilledahl. I am that confident in the true freshman as Luke Lilledahl at 125 pounds. But Braeden Davis isn't that. We're not having the same conversations about that at 133. Part of that is the field, the class that he's going up against, and the level of competition. Also, part of it is I still need to see some other things from Braeden Davis, but these are learning experiences, and it's a good thing. It's happening earlier in the season because better wrestling is due for Braeden Davis as the season progresses, right? Now, the Shayne Van Ness one, that has my attention. That has a little bit of concern. Now, I do not know this. I cannot confirm or deny. Apparently, some of the Penn State wrestlers were sick. There's a chance that Shayne Van Ness was not 100%. And you could certainly make that argument because for someone like Shayne Van Ness, who just honestly looks like the most physically gifted in terms of endurance, in terms of stamina, he looks like he has the most, aside from Mitchell Messenbrink, right? But Shayne Van Ness is up there, and it's comparable with those energy levels, and he just looked out of sync. It unusually gassed at the end, and maybe that's just because of the match that Ridge Lovett wrestled. For me personally, maybe some other people can speak to this, but you almost kind of forget that Ridge Lovett was the number one wrestler last season up until the NCAA postseason. And then Tyler Kasak, dominated, or, decisive victory, right? Major decisions, losing to, and then he gets to return the favor in the NCAA postseason. And it's like, oh, is this a reality check for Ridge Lovett? He loses to Caleb Henson in the regular season here. But this was a dominant victory in my mind. Some people might read it differently, and that's understandable. That Shayne Van Ness, clearly kind of the same thing, just did not have his best night. Who knows if he was 100%, but him and Braeden Davis kind of have, you can see the parallels in their matches where they make uncharacteristic mistakes, and it allowed the opponent to capitalize, but you can't make those kinds of mistakes against a Ridge Lovett. He'll make you pay, and look how quickly he scored. That was a nasty chin whip. That was a nasty chin whip by Ridge Lovett. And the issue was, Braeden Davis was getting caught not once, not twice, but 3 times. Same thing with Shayne Van Ness. He kept getting caught. He had no answer. He had no counter. So maybe it's just kind of at that point, all the momentum is in favor of a Ridge Lovett in a Jacob Van D. It's just that this wasn't, okay, this is a 6-2 decision, right? This was decisive. This was bordering for me. I thought it was domination from Ridge Lovett because Shayne Van Ness did not even, Braeden Davis at least is scrambles, had a couple of takedowns, but Shayne Van Ness had nothing. These were 2 points from escapes, and he didn't even get a takedown. So for someone that's supposed to contend for a national championship like a Ridge Lovett, to lose like that by major decision, Shayne Van Ness is so gifted offensively, and he doesn't even get a takedown. I get it. It's in Nebraska. This was really a moment for Ridge Lovett to really reestablish himself, and he lived up to the occasion. I don't think that it's a sign of things to come for Shayne Van Ness. It's the same thing. I'm not going to let one match define my opinion, my thoughts about Van Ness and about Davis as individual wrestlers. They are at Penn State for a reason. They will learn from this. They will grow from this. They will correct these things. And if there was, hey, if you weren't 100% and Ridge Lovett happened to be, or Jacob Van D happened to be, sometimes it's just your night. Sometimes it's just your night. So kudos to Lovett, but that one gets my confidence level for that rematch in the Big Ten championships and in the NCAA postseason certainly went down slightly for Shayne Van Ness. Not by a lot, not significantly, and same thing with Braeden Davis. My confidence level went slightly backwards because I leave watching those bouts with a few more questions than I do answers. So I see some of you are involved in the live chat, and that's great, and that's why we do those live shows. So we are going to get your comments, your questions, your reactions to this one. Penn State 31, Nebraska 7, and talk about some of those more individual matchups like Beau Bartlett's. Beau Bartlett, 8-7 over Nebraska's Brock Hardy. And in my mind, that was Beau Bartlett's best collegiate match of his career to this point in time. We'll talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook app is one of the best places to get involved in the NFL action now that the postseason is here. And right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you will get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That is $300 to keep the action going. FanDuel Sportsbook app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. And all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet for new customers. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for joining this live show on Locked On Nittany Lions to recap Penn State wrestling versus Nebraska. If you thought these shows were only for Penn State football, and we've done some Penn State basketball recaps as well, no, we're going to talk about Penn State wrestling in depth now that the slate has turned and Penn State is in the thick of everything. I want to talk about Beau Bartlett's matchup against Brock Hardy and then welcome all of you in from the live chat, because that was honestly going to be one of the most memorable. It should be. It should be the most memorable match of Beau Bartlett's career. Again, unless, to this point, right? I want to speak in that instance because there's a Big Ten tournament. There's an NCAA tournament where Beau Bartlett is ranked where he is for a reason, and the margin of error is so close between, Andrew. He's not going to face Andrew Ramirez until the postseason if that matchup hypothetically happens. But he's not going to get a second crack at Jesse Mendez until but when they wrestle, it's one takedown in the final seconds of the bout. Whether that's earlier this time around in the All-Star Classic, but at the NCAA Championship, final moments, Big Ten Championship, final moments. Whether on either side, Bartlett got the best of Mendez the first time around in that head-to-head dual meet. But then, when it mattered more, it was Jesse Mendez in the Big Ten and at NCAAs. But I would argue, just given the setting, given the circumstances, and Brock Hardy, this is a back and forth battle between the two. Brock Hardy is very close. I don't know what it is about Brock Hardy and Beau Bartlett. I mean, it helps being a talented wrestler in Hardy's own right. I think he has an outshot to contend for the national title. However, he does need some things to go in his favor because Ramirez, Mendez, and Bartlett exist. They're going to be there, right there. And all three of those guys are better than him to this point, as they've proven. But Brock Hardy is not too far behind. And he showed that. And it looked like he was in control at the end. I'm watching this one in real time and I'm thinking, man, Brock Hardy is going to get the best of Beau Bartlett here, and we're going to have to wait until Big Tens or at NCAAs for this one to be settled once again. And just when you thought that Beau Bartlett did not have an answer, he had another counter, because Beau Bartlett likes to go to that Granby roll, and Hardy rolled right with him. And I said, you know what? That is some damn good wrestling from Brock Hardy here. But why this is the best win of Beau Bartlett's career in collegiate wrestling. This was against a top 10 ranked wrestler who has defeated you before. So this one's personal. This is a close head-to-head matchup. And then it's in Nebraska. It's in a hostile environment. It's in front of a record sellout crowd. And you pick up that top 10 win with a reversal in the final seconds, despite all of the circumstances, against this caliber of opponent. That is why this one, honestly, things can change. There's a Big Ten tournament on the way. There's an NCAA tournament on the way. But right now in this moment, this is Beau Bartlett's best win, most emphatic win of his career. And I certainly think he'd agree. This one is going to last in his mind for quite some time. So thank you for joining the show in the live chat. Is Penn State developing a women's wrestling team? So since it's been approved at all three levels of Division I, Division II, Division III, I can't imagine that Penn State's going to pass up an opportunity here. There are female wrestlers that compete currently for freestyle in the Penn State wrestling room, but Iowa seems to be, if I give my right, I want to give an honest take. Iowa seems to be positioned well to start with, because they have some of the best women's wrestlers in the entire country competing there and training there right now. In comparison, I don't think Penn State has the same quantity of a roster, if you will, but that will change so quickly. Penn State has the resources and the dedication to wrestling across the board to where it will be no different, where it's Penn State and Iowa at the top. And Penn State has a clear distance, as we saw tonight with Nebraska. But for men's, but talking for women's wrestling, there certainly is. Iowa's going to be right there. I think Iowa's very positioned very well with this great news. It only does great things for the sport, right? Yes, sir. Yeah, no, celebrate a fantastic win for Penn State, 31-7 against Nebraska. That looks like, with the way that they've wrestled this season, people are calling this team historic, and that's another big takeaway here, is that a season ago, this team already set records, and now this team can be better. I can, if folks would like me to, but Carter Starachi's matchup, it doesn't need as much analysis as some of these other ones do, because people are doubting a Josh Barr, or they're not taking him as seriously. Objectively speaking, for the general wrestling population, of course, the experts and people that follow Penn State wrestling are going to say differently. But then there are people that are going to say, well, Josh Barr starting for the first time, and there's AJ Ferrari and Jacob Cardenas. What are his? He's an All-America contender, but is he really a national title contender? Luke Lilledahl's a true freshman. Penn State's had the 125-pound curse. That's my point above all of this, is that the Carter Starachi's proven it year in and year out. And Luke Lilledahl and Josh Barr are still being doubted to an extent, but they continue to prove it day in and day out with the way that they perform here. So, but this Penn State wrestling team is getting the credit overall, where they just come out and through the first 5 matches, through the first half of the dual meet, and they dominate, and it looks like it's going to be on that way to a shutout. Lenny Pinto. Now, I expect Levi Haynes and Carter Starachi and Josh Barr and Greg Kirkfleet and Luke Lilledahl to win those matches, and they do. But I'm saying that, hey, it didn't go Braeden Davis's way, but I guarantee you wrestle that match 10 more times, and it's probably going to go in Braeden Davis's favor. It didn't tonight, but I very well think it does. So this could have been a shutout, and at least it was shaping up to be. But I think the halftime helped. Penn State, from what I gathered, it was strategic with where the weight class started. They started at 174. Now, I know Penn State still wins, and I'm not trying to argue that, Nebraska would have made this a lot closer and the result would have been different. But you can't argue against that either. I'm not saying that the Cornhuskers make this a dual meet and it comes down to 1 or 2 bouts that were Penn State, because Penn State, again, they were picking up tech falls and major decisions, and they were racking up bonus points, where Nebraska wasn't going to routinely do that. But the crowd is taken out of it. It's 5-0 Penn State with bonus points in between at halftime. And Penn State chose to start at 174. Imagine if that one starts at 125 routinely, right? That's normally where the weight class starts, at 125 with the lightweight. Okay, yes, Luke Lilledahl gets the win. But then there's the 133 bout. And it just kind of shifts momentum. It keeps Nebraska's crowd in it. And time's against them. When you're down 5-0 and then, okay, you have a few more matches and you assume that you're going to lose them because of the caliber of Penn State opponents that you're going up against. So that record-setting crowd was completely taken out of it. You're basically wrestling for the individual integrity at that point, because there were 3 bouts left and it's up. Penn State secured another victory. It's number 64 in a row as a team, and Penn State can really just focus on the individuals, and same thing with Nebraska. So that's what it really was for. It was kind of bragging rights and how the wrestlers personally were performing, but the team dual meet was completely out of reach. So to start at 174 actually helped Penn State out. Not that they needed the help, but it certainly gave them a leg up in this one, going into that hostile crowd, record-setting environment. And I know that I never in my mind did I think Nebraska was going to disappoint with this setup. It's just nice that all the thousands of people were there to see that this isn't just another number 1 ranked Penn State wrestling team. This is a team that is going to reset records, is going to try to get that right 5, 6 national champions, and maybe, 7 that are just get to the finals, and then have 5 or 6 that win. That's the goal, to move the bar up every single time. So 4 individual champions isn't enough. 6 that are in the finals is not enough. Penn State is going to try to reset that in its own right. They're basically trying to break their own records. It's not even about NCAA records. It's about trying to break their own records. We're going to take another quick break to pay some bills, but when we return, talk about the comments more and get anybody else's reaction about Penn State versus Nebraska on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by Prizepicks. This message brought to you by Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prizepicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all of the football action. And now it's playoff time. And there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prizepicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that is right, 1,000 times your cash, just by making a few simple selections. And the postseason is here for the NFL. This week on Prizepicks, I'm looking at players like Lamar Jackson for more than 250 passing yards, or Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards. It's fun to predict and easy to play. Plus, Prizepicks gives you the flex play, where you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Get ready to run your game this football postseason. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. That is Prizepicks. Run your game. We're in the home stretch here of this live show talking about Penn State versus Nebraska. And again, thank you so much to all of you for spending a Friday night. And if you're on the East Coast, now after midnight going into Saturday. So thank you so much for spending your time with me. In the 133-pound match, Braeden Davis didn't settle in with his shots and went for the big throws, and it cost him the early takedown with a 4-point near fall. And it didn't feel like Braeden Davis was too far behind in that one either. I thought he was going to recover. It wasn't until the last 60 seconds where, and I'm listening, so I'm watching, I'm clearly not at my home studio here, out of town for the weekend, but watching Braeden Davis and then listening to Jeff Byers call it, and it's just time and time again, he had to take those risks. He had to take that gamble against Jacob Van D, where you can't do that. And if you think the other way about Jacob Van D is where, no, Braeden Davis should have been able to get one of those moves, maybe, but it seemed like Jacob Van D was on his game. Jacob Van D routinely, I covered high school wrestling in central Pennsylvania. He routinely was matched up against teams that I was covering in the area. So I saw a lot of Jacob Van D when he was at the top of his game at the high school level. You would think that he would be, consistently in the top 10 or so, just given what I've seen from him as a wrestling prospect. He's not there, but he still has elements of it. So this is, like I said, it raises some question marks. It raises some concerns. I'm not going to sit here and make a declaration that Braeden Davis can't do it. And if he doesn't, wrestle Jacob Van D again, if he does wrestle him again, that this will happen another time. That's not it at all. But Braeden Davis is basically playing catch up, but he was right there too. He hits one of those moves. He gets a takedown at the end of the second period. What is that, 9? That's 9-9, and I can't believe that. That score. Braeden Davis matches don't go like that. But if it's 9-9 going into the third period, just Jacob Van D had an answer for every one of the risky moves that Braeden Davis had to take. And that's, point of building a lead. You have to do things that are uncharacteristic to your game. You get out of your comfort zone. And that's what happened with Braeden Davis against Nebraska. 149-pound Shayne Van Ness wasn't disciplined either with his defense, and that cost him in the match. He will learn from this loss, and come March, he will prevail as the 149-pound champion. I don't have my doubts that Shayne Van Ness isn't going to really. It's Caleb Henson, Shayne Van Ness, and obviously Ridge Lovett. I think for me, it wasn't so much. Yes, it is surprising to see Shayne Van Ness because there was no rust for him coming back from the season-ending injury. He looked more than himself. It's just that Ridge Lovett has kind of settled back into where he's not an outsider in these conversation talks. Like I said, he had a disappointing NCAA postseason, And that kind of created somewhat of a bias in me that this isn't the same Ridge Lovett, right? We're not getting the same Ridge Lovett, are we? You're not getting the same Ridge Lovett. You're getting the one that thinks he's the number one wrestler, believes that he's the number one wrestler. Caleb Henson is that. Since Caleb Henson has defeated Ridge Lovett recently, and then Ridge Lovett has now defeated Shayne Van Ness. That's the hierarchy to this point. It's kind of like Keegan O'Toole and Levi Haynes. Until further notice, this is how it is. But anything can happen. Andrew Alirez and Jesse Mendez and Beau Bartlett, right? Kind of the same thing. But anything can happen, and that's why you have the NCAA postseason. Forget what we talk about on paper. There are still matches to be wrestled here. But Shayne Van Ness clearly looked undisciplined and did not look like himself. And Ridge Lovett really maximized the opportunities. Ridge Lovett is damn good and outperformed Shayne Van Ness, no excuses. And I agree with that. I don't think this was luck. I really think, I think Lovett came to wrestle, and that Shayne Van Ness, risky moves, kind of like Braeden Davis, but not, it's just the fact that, okay, Braeden Davis never seemed truly out of it until the final 60 seconds. Whereas I'm watching this one for Shayne Van Ness, and I'm like, there's no way he comes back. He didn't have a takedown. He didn't have a counter. Ridge Lovett had an answer for everything. Whereas Davis was getting takedowns, Davis was getting into scrambles, and just wasn't finishing the moves. Shayne Van Ness wasn't doing anything. Really, it was a lot. It was a whole lot of nothing. He would try to make a move, and Lovett was ready for it, and really tired him out throughout the match. I think that Braeden Davis at least gave you something. He always had a fighter's chance until, like I said, the final minute. Davis and Van Ness will profit from these decisive losses. Don't count them out in the NCAAs. And I hope I'm not implying that. I wanted to make that clear that I do not believe that. I do not think that Braeden Davis is an absolute long shot. I think some people will say that Braeden Davis isn't ready, but then he doesn't wrestle. If that wasn't the case, then how do you look at the Ryan Crookham matchup? How do you look at the Nasir Bailey win? Where the things that Braeden Davis struggled with a season ago, he has improved upon. Better wrestling is still ahead of him. It's the same thing with Josh Barr. Josh Barr is wrestling like this right now. Braeden Davis has shown significant signs of improvement. It is still clearly, dealing with things that he struggled with a season ago, but they're not as egregious. They're not as apparent, and they kind of show up in these one-off opportunities. So better wrestling is ahead for a Braeden Davis and even a Josh Barr. And that's crazy to think with the wins that Josh Barr has racked up here early in the season. He's only going to get better. This is not the peak of Braeden Davis. This is not the peak of Josh Barr. Honestly, I can say the same thing about Shayne Van Ness. This is not the peak of Shayne Van Ness. And it's good that for the bright side of it all, it is good that these matches happen now as opposed to, say, the Big Ten tournament. If something like this happened in the Big Ten tournament, yeah, I'd kind of be scrambling because now same thing with Levi Haynes. You get that one against Keegan O'Toole, you just don't have enough to get over the finish line, and that's where you are. But this is happening in January and not early March, late February, early March. Barr the Beast. Yes, Josh Barr is a beast and should be considered as such, right? Agree, and Barr reminds me of Messenbrink with his relentless attacks. Mitchell Messenbrink is just, it's so exciting to watch him compete because he is so different from the other 9 starters and anybody else that's wrestled in the past. And it's just because of the quickness and just how he just continue attack, re-attack, different shot, right? He just doesn't, right out of the gate against Bubba Wilson. In 0.5 seconds, I think Wilson blinked and Messenbrink was ready to go in for a takedown, and it was the same thing. He's just like, you know what? I'm going to let him go. I'm going to cut him loose. I don't want to. He plays to his strengths, but it's just he just continues to attack. Josh Barr isn't even like that to an extent. There's elements of it. He certainly has. I think he's certainly taking pointers from Messenbrink. But Messenbrink's on a whole nother level when it comes to, this is truly, the saying goes in football, sometimes the best defense is an elite offense, and that's Mitchell Messenbrink. 20-3 for somebody that shoots and attacks as much as he does. You would think that eventually a counter or a mistake would happen, and no, Mitchell Messenbrink is just all around. He is the favorite by and far. They're in this 165-pound class. I do not, and it's because Mitchell Messenbrink is that good. It's not even about the level of competition. He is just that much further ahead than everybody else, and trains and has developed better than anybody else over the past 2 years. I mean, he was that close to David Carr, right? So I will say at 125, Luke really surprised me and rose to the challenge in a big away match and had the poise of a senior 4-time champion. Luke is now, in my opinion, the person to beat come March at NCAAs. And maybe it's because just from talking to Jeff Byers on this show, it's great to have him on as a guest. Truly, you're not going to get a better Penn State expert when it comes to wrestling than him. But just the pedigree that he's not your average true freshman. And this is where we'll wrap up. We're past the 30-minute mark here on this show. And I appreciate, and I wish I could get to everybody's comments, but to wrap up with Luke Lilledahl on a positive note rather than criticizing Shayne Van Ness and Braeden Davis in this case. But Luke Lilledahl, it is not your average true freshman. I know everybody knows that, but it's still where you just need to see to believe it. And freshmen come in a lot of times with, lofty expectations, aspirations. Carter Starachi is certainly going for something different because of COVID and everything else with the 5-time NCAA champion. But still becoming a 4-time champ and having this opportunity is not a routine thing. And for Luke Lilledahl to be considered a favorite, he should be considered a favorite. I do not view him, number 12 wrestler Luke Lilledahl. I look at him, honestly, because of Figueroa, who's defending the title, certainly deserves to be ranked above. But if we're talking about actual subjective rankings instead of the objective rankings, since he doesn't have enough matches under his belt, Luke Lilledahl should be 2 or 3. He should be 2 or 3 when you look at the 125-pound rankings. And I am confident. I'm not, cautiously optimistic. I am confident that he wins a Big Ten championship and that he contends for an NCAA championship as well. He's not going to get there by accident. He's going to earn it. And he continues to win these, like you said, the poise, the discipline, the veteran mindset. And that will happen with all of the accolades that he has picked up, wrestling internationally. Coming into this season, this is the last note on Luke Lilledahl. He's been defeating these kinds of wrestlers throughout his career at other tournaments. To get to the championship, he has to go through former All-Americans, former NCAA finalists, and they're at the top of their game. They are peaking at 26, 27. He's defeating wrestlers that were former collegiate All-Americans in the international circuit when they are 24, 25, 26 on the senior level, right? And Luke Lilledahl, 16, 17, 18 years old, and he's doing that before he even gets to Penn State. That was all I needed to see from Luke Lilledahl to say that, yes, he is going to be a title contender at 125 right out of the gate and really does have the potential to be a 4-time NCAA champ. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions as always. Thank you so much for joining this live show. These conversations don't happen without all of you. So thank you for spending your time on a late Friday night going into Saturday talking about Penn State wrestling here. The final, Penn State 31, Nebraska 7. Penn State, of course, remains undefeated in Big Ten competition and on the season as well overall in dual meets. And it's the 64th consecutive victory for Penn State as a team. If you are new to this show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcast, please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. And for more coverage, more conversations around your favorite Penn State teams, talking football, wrestling, and basketball, it is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.